several aspects of our elections are unacceptable because of murky factors in the external environment. And I want to call attention to 4 of them. First, violence. Some people say that violence in our election did not start yesterday. No. But instead of decreasing over the years, it appears to be increasing in both numbers and intensity. If our 2 major political parties are to be believed, they no longer have militias, if they are to be believed. But what is even more worrying is the allegation of the involvement of national security personnel in election violence. I'm afraid this is very serious and foreboding for our democracy. 2, disrespect for other candidates. Instead of mutual respect for other candidates seeking the same office, the tendency has been to show open disrespect for the other candidate and try by any means, fair or foul, to portray him or her as unworthy of the office. Oftentimes, the same attitude is portrayed by the supporters of the respective candidate. In such an atmosphere, political campaigning loses its essence as an opportunity for candidates to tell voters what policies they will put in place to solve their problems and improve their conditions of life. 3, too many promises. In place of enunciating policies, our politicians spend a lot of time making and repeating promises to the electorate. One cannot be sure that even the politicians themselves believe that they can fulfill the numerous promises that they make. Anyway, they seem to forget that unfulfilled promises can be a millstone around a politician's neck. The negative effects can be devastating because even party members who were not part of the promise-making enterprise may find it difficult to extricate themselves from the effects. 4, vote buying. In days gone by, whatever vote buying or vote selling there was took place in secrecy. Not so these days. What we have now looks like an open market where candidates can freely buy votes and citizens can freely sell their votes in broad daylight, while we all look on seemingly unconcerned. But it is a shameful spectacle because vote buying and vote selling are unlawful and they undermine 2 important principles that underpin our democracy. Vote buying undermines the idea that we choose our leaders out of our free will. And vote selling undermines the idea that we hold our elected leaders accountable through elections. I believe that our democracy is kaput when election results cease to be a true representation of our verdict on the performance of our leaders, and we cannot therefore hold them accountable through elections. And that precisely is what the emerging open market in votes portends. I'm sure that there are other factors about our elections that you may consider to be unsatisfactory. But the ones I have mentioned are enough to indicate that all is not well with our democracy. In fact, they are additional signs of the deconsolidation of our democracy. That is all I want to say about elections now. I will now turn briefly to the judiciary. We will all agree that street protests and media wars are not appropriate ways of resolving disagreements over electoral matters. Neither can achieve authoritative and binding conclusions. Besides, street actions can be costly in terms of human and property loss. With regard to the media, it has become extremely difficult to distinguish between genuine media and counterfeit media because of the preponderance of one-sided, even distorted presentation of issues in the partisan media, the indiscretions of some serial callers, especially into radio discussions, and the irresponsible use of social media for political purposes. Nor do we know the impact that artificial intelligence will make on elections in view of its ability to create voices and visual images that are virtually indistinguishable from the real ones. Add to this the fact that election-related matters cannot be an exception to the rule of law, and you can readily see why the judiciary is an integral part of our electoral system. As a general rule, election cases are urgent cases that need to be decided as quickly as practicable, except where the court genuinely does not know what to do in the particular situation. An example of such a situation occurred in Washington, D.C., in America. A candidate was officially sworn into office as a winner in the city council election when all the overseas votes had not been counted. Later, after collating the overseas votes, a different candidate emerged as the actual winner. The new winner went to court. But the case was not decided during the entire lifespan of the particular council, apparently because a situation like that had never happened before, and the court did not know what to do once somebody had already been officially sworn into office. When the council's life ended, the case was dislodged on the ground that the substance of the action was vacuous. As far as I know, allegations of corrupt judges taking money to decide election cases have been rare in Ghana. However, in recent times, concerns have been expressed about the judicial function in elections. These concerns are encapsulated in two interrelated concepts: the judicialization of elections and the politicization of the judiciary. Judicialization of elections refers to the increasing trend of resorting to the judiciary to settle electoral controversies of all kinds. Politicization of the judiciary refers to appointing judges in the hope that they will give judgments that are favorable to a particular political party or cause if the need arises. As to which one comes first, it is like the chicken and egg question. It depends on which chicken or egg one is talking about. Is it the chicken that laid the egg or the egg that hatched into the baby chick? So the sequence may differ from one country to another. What we can say for sure is that judicialization begets politicization, and politicization begets judicialization. And the end result is the same. Judges are embedded in the judiciary in anticipation of decisions favorable to a particular political party or cause. I do not know the extent to which judges are so embedded in our judicial system. I don't. But I find it noteworthy that even before the Supreme Court began hearing the 2012 presidential election petition, some Ghanaians were predicting a 6-3 verdict of the 9 justices based on the number of panel members appointed by presidents of the 2 disputing political parties. The prediction did not come true, but it indicates that there was a perception that the decisions of our judges might be influenced by political considerations. Be that as it may, political influence aside, judges may give unsound decisions in election cases for 2 other reasons. The first reason is insufficient knowledge of elections. Judges are not necessarily experts in elections, and they may sometimes give judgments in election cases without realizing the full implications for the entire electoral process. This is often seen in injunctions and consequential orders. For example, a judge once placed an injunction on holding the district level elections when some candidates went to his court complaining that there had been no voter education at all in their areas. The areas comprised only 6 electoral areas out of thousands of such areas in the entire country. But the injunction unwittingly covered the whole country. So if that held, means we couldn't hold the elections. You have how many? I don't want to give you a number, but there are thousands of electoral areas. And we complain about 6, and we put an injunction on the entire election, thousands of them. It's because he confessed to me later on that he didn't know. He confessed to me, Yes. He was one day. I went and sat with him. We were eating. We were having, we were having discussions with the judiciary about elections, and he was sitting next to me. I gave that example, and he said, "I'm the one." He just didn't know. Similarly, a judge once ordered a recount of the votes in a disputed election result case, but also ordered that the ballot boxes could only be opened in the presence of the agents of all the four parties that were present at the initial count. All right? He is giving the order. Yes, you have to go back and count. Then he adds that you can only open the boxes when all the people are there. As it turned out, the two parties not contesting the results were simply not interested in the recount and would not be present. But the judge had said we could not open the ballot boxes until all four of them were there. To a number of occasions, we will notify them, we'll go, and then only two parties will be present. In such situations, the EC has to get the decision varied by the same court or by another court before it can act. The second reason for unsound judgment is what may be characterized as the lack of purposive interpretation of the law in full-blown election petitions. I'd like to spend a bit of time on this because it is not as self-explanatory as the previous one. To start with, let me give an example of what I consider to have been a purposive interpretation of the law when I was at the Electoral Commission. A Ghanaian citizen then living abroad once walked to the Commission's head office and said he wanted to register as a voter so that he could vote in an election due to be held in about 2 months' time. It was explained to him that voter registration officially closed more than a month back, so he would have to wait till the next registration period. Not satisfied, he took the commission to court, and the court ruled that under our Constitution, the right to register to vote is a fundamental right, and it is not within the remit of the Electoral Commission to decide when citizens will enjoy their fundamental rights. I described that decision as purposive because it was directed at achieving two goals, both of which were consistent with the principles of electoral justice. The first goal was to preserve a citizen's right to register at a time of his or her choice, since registration or voting is not compulsory in Ghana. Registration is not compulsory. Voting is not compulsory. So the citizen maybe initially didn't see the reason why vote. All of a sudden, he said, hey, now maybe he should be able to register. This is what the judge was telling us. So it was to preserve that right of the citizen. It is important to note that in principle the decision imposed on the Electoral Commission, this many years back, a duty beyond the traditional conception of continuous registration, to voter registration every working day. That's what it meant. The citizen had the right to be registered every working day. That's what the judge was saying. So continuous registration did not begin yesterday. That decision imposed on us. The traditional conception of the continuous registration is that you register this time, you keep the names, you register next time, you add them to the old one. You register next time, you add them, you pile on. But they don't have to be done every working day. You can do them at set periods and put them together. And that was a traditional conception. This decision imposed on the commission that every working day, if a citizen comes, okay, must be registered. Of course, at that time, in deference to the court, we registered the person, but we kept our mouths shut because we did not have the wherewithal to implement the decision, on a full scale. If people had known that we had registered that person, maybe the following day, the people would come, and people will be coming until a day before election day. Right? So we registered the person, but we kept. Yeah. I think 2 other people came, and we registered them quietly. Quietly, yes. Anyway, in essence, the second goal of the decision was to tell the commission to establish a cutoff point of voter registration if continuous registration would cause problems for its work. A cutoff point means that you can place your name in the voter registration database after the cutoff point. But in order not to disrupt the preparations of the Electoral Commission, you cannot vote in the impending election. You can only vote in subsequent elections. The EC thereafter established a voter registration cutoff point by law. At that time, we had not established a cutoff point by law. But once we've established a cutoff point by law, now, if you came and you said you wanted to register and you came after we had cut off, then we will add your name to the database, but you cannot vote in the independent election. I understand that the Commission now has the capacity to do every working day registration of voters in its district offices. By way of further elucidation, I wish to follow up the example of purposive interpretation of the law by indicating 3 things that I think should not happen. That is my interpretation. 3 things that should not happen on a purposive interpretation of law. 1, a sizable group of people should not be denied representation in Parliament for a long time, because that is plainly inconsistent with the idea of representative government. 2, an election case should not be dismissed forthwith on a technicality like, oh, the case was not filed in time, or the lawyer brought a writ instead of a petition. For all you know, the candidate and the voters may not know the filing deadline, let alone the difference between a writ and a petition. And yet, they are the ones who get punished. I think that it would be more appropriate in such a situation to find the lawyer and hear the substantive case. Find the lawyer and then go ahead and hear the substantive case. 3, a judge should not cancel some duly cast votes and declare the winner of an election if there is a mathematical chance that the affected votes can make a difference in the result. The reason is that doing so amounts to the judge usurping a function reserved exclusively for the people in a true democracy. It is more appropriate to order a rerun of the election for the people to decide. I wish to make 3 recommendations concerning electoral accountability and democratic consolidation to conclude my reflections. First, as in all human endeavors, mistakes occur in elections. But genuine election mistakes can readily be discovered and corrected. Not so deliberate wrongdoing. To deter deliberate wrongdoing, all persons connected with the conduct of elections must be held strictly accountable for their actions by instituting a stringent regime of punishment for willful wrongdoing. All categories of election workers must be familiarized with the applicable regime of sanctions during their training, and any infractions must be seen to be punished. 2, it appears that some candidates rush to court with election petitions alleging manipulation of results, primarily to placate their financiers and supporters so that they will be given another chance to be a candidate the next time. The rush can cause undeserved injury to the reputation of the Electoral Commission and unnecessary inundation of the courts. As we speak, there are well over 1,000 election petitions before the courts in Nigeria following the 2023 elections. Yes, well over 1,000 election petitions. Some of them will not be concluded before the next election is held. To prevent the rush to court with improbable election petitions from becoming a fashion, I suggest that election petitions that do not succeed should attract punitive sanctions. Yes. Thirdly, in view of the importance of the judicial function in elections, I wish to recommend collaboration between the judiciary and the Electoral Commission to institute a program of continuing education for judges on elections. Such a program will improve the delivery of electoral justice, which in turn will contribute to electoral accountability and the consolidation of our democracy. In conclusion, let me say that free and fair elections are indispensable for the health of our democracy. We must all understand that it is an onerous responsibility to deliver free and fair elections, and that it is in our collective interest as citizens, irrespective of our positions in society, to help the Electoral Commission in any way we can to deliver free and fair elections. The least we should expect from everybody is proper election behavior. Thank you very much.